So, Michael, obviously Top Gun Maverick is nominated for Best Picture at this year's Oscars, and it's probably not going to win. It's probably going to be some bullshit like Tar, which I haven't seen, even though it's meant to be really good. But the thing is, Top Gun Maverick might not win Best Picture, but it's won something even bigger, Michael. It's
Our hearts.
Steven Spielberg tells Tom Cruise, "You saved Hollywood's ass," and Top Gun Maverick might have saved the entire theatrical industry.
I suppose in some sense you could say that what really makes films good, this isn't going to be a funny answer, crap, but I'm going to say it anyway. What makes films good is variety, and therefore, in theory, any old crap is saving the movie industry, as long as it's different. Just like how Tom Cruise's sexuality is different from a straight person's. There you go, I made it funny.
All right, well, obviously that's an allegation. We don't know that's the case. Mr. Cruise has always insisted he's straight.
Yeah, as he said, he chooses to live his life as a straight man.
Yes, he does, yes.
Hello and welcome to Select and Reflect, the movie review podcast where we look at films that have come out in the near and distant past. We give them a couple of watches and evaluate them beyond first impressions. I'm your host Michael, and I'm joined as always by my co-host Luke. And this week we are celebrating the Oscars by looking at films that have been nominated or were nominated for Best Picture in last year's Oscars. We are not celebrating the release of the sequel to this movie, which I believe is being released in autumn. Have you guessed what it is yet? It's Dune, Part 1, which I think is what it was called on the, So Luke, why don't you tell us a thing or two about Dune, Part 1?
I like how you said, in case you haven't guessed, when of course...
I like to assume there's a degree of interactivity going on.
Yes, the title and the thumbnail will make it clear what movie we are reviewing.
Yeah. So when you really think about it in that sense, do I need to bother at all introducing the movie? We just don't, do we? We can just let it go unsaid.
Yeah, so anyway, Dune, titled on screen as Dune Part 1. I also saw that, but obviously the studio didn't want to call it that in case it didn't do well, and they didn't get the green light for a sequel, because that would have been very embarrassing.
But also, it's very cowardly that they couldn't commit to it.
Yeah, I know.
They couldn't have confidence in it.
Well, this came out at a time where people weren't going to the movies a lot. It was still in 2021, which we'll get into when we look at the box office. But anyway, so Dune or Dune Part 1. Is it Dune or June? What is that?
Oh, that's an interesting question, an interesting linguistic issue to consider. Obviously one would imagine it somewhat varies by region, but it's, I think, also even person to person and even moment to moment.
Yeah, a good point. Very good point. Yeah, on the poster it looks like a dunk. If you've seen the poster.
Oh wait.
Yeah.
I don't know why the word dunk is very funny, especially when it's said in a northern accent.
Dunk.
Dunk.
Well, how would you say it? Dank, and
I'd say yeah.
Replace
Dunk.
the U with an A. Yeah. But the thing is, they put a little on the poster. Of course, I think this was memed when the poster came out. They put a little white light on the E to make it look like an E, but it's still, if you look at it from a distance, it does look like a C.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dune is a 2021 American epic science fiction film directed by Denis Villeneuve. Here's the thing, right? I said Denis Villeneuve. How do you pronounce this, Michael?
Yeah, okay, I know his name. I guess I would pronounce it roughly similar. I think Denis Villeneuve is how I'd pronounce it. I don't know how much similar it is to what you said.
There's Formula One drivers who have the surname Villeneuve, and it's spelled like that. But it's just everyone. I've never heard anyone say Denis Villeneuve.
Everyone says, yeah.
Everyone says it in a weird French way.
Villeneuve.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, Jacques Villeneuve, the 1997 Formula One world champion, beat Michael Schumacher. Shout out to him. The screenplay is also by Villeneuve. That's what I'm going to call him. And it is the first part of a two-part adaptation of the 1965 novel by Frank Herbert.
What's the difference between an adaptation and an adaptation? Interesting.
But I just said adaptation because it was shorter.
You save time. That is the difference between the two words, to be fair. Can't argue that.
Yeah, I mean, hey, maybe there is a difference there. But anyway, it is an adaptation or an adaptation, whatever you like, of the 1965 novel by Frank Herbert, primarily covering the first half of the book, which you would expect because it's called Part 1. Yes. So the movie was directed by Denis Villeneuve. The screenplay was by John Spatis, Denis Villeneuve, and Eric Roth. based on obviously Dune by Frank Herbert. It stars a lot of people. Timothy Chalamet. He is not Timothy Shall I Be Gay
Not in this one.
No, not in this one. Unlike James and the Giant Peach. Now, what was that movie called?
Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
Why did you? Oh, I know why. That's funny.
Yeah. Okay. Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Stephen McKinley, just a guy called Henderson, and just a girl called Zendaya. It's I'm such a moron. It's Stephen McKinley Henderson, but it's on 2 lines.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense because I was like, yeah.
The Liverpool player?
It's not Jordan Henderson is not in this movie. David Dasmalchian, Chang Chen, which is not a racist J.K. Rowling name.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I was going to say it's the classic J.K. Rowling situation. Is it a racist J.K. Rowling name or just a genuine Chinese name? You never can tell.
Well, it's not Chinese, it's Taiwanese actually.
Uh-oh.
So
same thing, am I right?
You're not
social credit score, Xi Jinping.
Okay, yeah, good point actually. If you frame it like that, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not racist. I'm just pro-Chinese.
Sharon Duncan Brewster, Charlotte Rampling, Jason Momoa, and Javier Bardem also star in this movie. So that's a lot of people who star in this movie. A real ensemble cast, as they say.
100%. Let's hope that 90% of them don't end up dead by the end of it.
The thing is, I say ensemble cast. Paul Atreides is very much the main character, you know. So it's not when you say ensemble, it's like they all have an equal
like
part.
Love Actually.
Yeah, it's like they all have an equal part in the movie. There's not one standout main character. That's maybe not the case, so maybe it doesn't qualify as an ensemble. Anyway, the movie was released on October the 22nd, 2021 in the United States. And Michael, can we have a guess on what the budget was for Dune?
That's an interesting one. It's a lot of people in it, right? And also a lot going on. But also, you did say that they were a bit skeptical. I mean, I guess, but it has to be quite a lot.
They were skeptical of the
100
sequel.
Million.
I was going to say they were skeptical of the sequel to try and help you out. It is a lot more than that. It's 165, but you did not guess.
Still technically, yeah. I kind of, when I went for 100 million, I was like, it could be a fair bit more, but it's one of those situations where I was like, well, it's not going to be more than 200 million.
No.
So
yeah. Okay. So
nor would it be less than 50 million.
You're playing not to lose.
Yes, exactly.
So, can you tell me what the box office was? And I'm not going to give you additional context because I think that'll hurt your chances. Just tell me what you think the box office was.
250 million. No, sorry, that's not enough. It made 300 million.
Okay, good. You got closer. It's actually 402.
Okay.
That's the amount. So yeah, 400 million. And the thing is, I was going to tell you it was also released on HBO Max, of course. This is what the Warner Brothers did in 2021.
Yeah, so like people liked it so much that not only they could have watched it on HBO Max and they went to the cinema anyway. Steven Spielberg, directorial praise in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I think this has to qualify as a success, really.
Yeah.
To be honest, from a box office perspective. Also released on HBO Max, made a profit, I'd say. So congratulations to Denis Villeneuve on this, and that's why, of course, they're getting a sequel, which will, of course, be titled Dune Part 2.
Congratulations.
Yes. And of course, normally we would be reviewing this movie around the time the sequel is coming out, of course, to time it right. But this was nominated for Best Picture last year.
Ugh, how annoying.
So we have to do it at this time.
Yeah,
so
this is why we don't want big franchise films to ever get nominated for Best Picture, because it really throws things off.
We're going to have to do it with Avatar next year. We're gonna have to do it. Yeah. Avatar.
Wait, hold on. When is Avatar 3 supposed to be released?
Avatar 3 is meant to be released in 2024.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's
we're going
weird.
to have to do it, this time next year, Avatar, instead of December 2024. Anyway, Michael, can you tell me whether you liked Dune?
Well, I kind of said in the cold open that, all something has to be, in a way, is different. And I did kind of appreciate that. Like with this film, I also think when we're looking at these, films, Best Picture films, a lot of the time they're dramas, often you get these dramas, don't you? And it was kind of nice to just have a little break and just look at a film that was, actually just a fantasy adventure film. Not to say it wasn't very artsy in its own way. The main criticism I have is that there is a lot of lore to this world, and at some points I did kind of feel like there's less of a plot and more of just quickly, exposition.
Michael, quickly tell me, who is Bene Gesserit?
Who is Bene Gesserit?
Which character is Bene Gesserit?
I don't know who Bene Gesserit is because they say it several times, and they say I'm asking Bene Gesserit.
You moron! The Bene Gesserit are a sisterhood.
That makes sense. I was gonna guess it was a group actually, so I feel embarrassed for not. But now I feel like I'm saying after the fact, and you have no reason to believe me. Oh dear.
Yeah. You're right. There's a lot of lore, and we'll get into that.
Yeah. So like overall, I mean, I did enjoy it, but I wasn't like I can't say that I was like, yeah, like, you know, you compare to something like Lord of the Rings where there's like a plot, or Star Wars where there's like a big plot and you're very invested. And it's like this film's kind of like. And I mean, the ending is, I think, one of the examples of where you're just like, oh, okay. So, like, the ending kind of cements the fact that this film is not super, like, yes, big plot, everything. Having said that, could see myself, you know, I'm glad this film has a sequel. I'm hoping maybe with the sequel, you know, stuff has been set up. Maybe it'll get more exciting. This film wasn't super exciting, but it was entertaining. I did technically like it.
When I think back on watching this movie, one thing that stands out, of course, is the production design. Just unbelievably good, and it does really immerse you in this world.
Yeah,
and there are a lot.
This is better than Avatar. Fight me.
And there are a lot of cool scenes. But you're right. I mean, you said, you know, the difference between this and say Lord of the Rings or Star Wars is the lack of plot, and that is a real issue, to be honest. Watching this movie,
and probably in terms of rewatchability too.
Yes, this movie, in my opinion, dies in terms of my intrigue and interest at around the 1 hour 20-minute mark when I'm going to get their name wrong. The house beginning with H. Harkonnen.
Harkonnen. Hoboken, New Jersey.
I was thinking of like Harakin or something, but no, it's
yeah. My Hoboken was because it's something like that.
Yeah. So when House Harkonnen attacks, you know, the planet that
the big action scene.
Yes, Arrakis. I got to see. I'm trying to remember these names, and it's House Atreides who are controlling Arrakis. And
I like Atreides is easy to remember because it's a cool name.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. Cooler than Harkonnen.
Yeah, that's the undisclosed reason for the conflict.
Yes. The thing is, when House Harkonnen attack Arrakis, at 1 hour 20 minutes in, I feel like the movie has been building up to that point. And so when that happens, the movie then immediately, for me anyway, it loses intrigue. And immediately I become uninvested in the last part of the movie. You know, it's an hour still to go. The thing is, I know what's going to happen. Paul Atreides is going to survive, and he's going to go to the Fremen, because obviously the Fremen are built up throughout the first part of the movie. And I did enjoy the world building in the first part. You know, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed learning about these new planets. I enjoyed learning about the geopolitical situation. That always interests me. And it felt like the movie was building up to this big battle for Arrakis, and then it arrives halfway through the movie, and then the second half of the movie really isn't that interesting because it's just Paul escaping. And finding the Fremen, which, you know, is just not that intriguing, is it? Up until an hour 20 in, I was really happy. I was really satisfied with that. But then it just did die, unfortunately.
I pretty much agree with everything you just said in terms of like it feeling like after the big battle, which, you know, makes us sound like total dude bros, but it's not that. It's just that like after that, there's not really as much going on. And I'll also say I feel like if this film had been in the hands of somebody maybe a little bit less obsessed with visuals, which, you know, the visuals were nice, but like, you know, if this film, then it could have been a bit more fast paced. And I actually think, based on what happens in this film, there is no reason why this couldn't have been fit into like half as much runtime.
Yeah,
you know, like, you could just kind of start, like, you don't have to introduce everything as much. You can start it a bit more in kind of media res.
That's his style, Villeneuve's style.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember obviously he did Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I was thinking Blade Runner too.
Blade Runner 2049. There is so many scenes where you're just watching characters walk, and sometimes that's fine. Sometimes it's like, right, you don't need to do it for this longer period. Maybe it's different if you're watching it, you know, on the big screen. But I just found that to be the case. This was better. This wasn't that. I never thought, okay, you should move things along now. But yeah, you're right. It's 2.5 hours. I didn't mind it was slow play. Like the pace being slow, that didn't bother me. I was fine with it. Again, it never got too slow for me. Yeah. But again, this movie could have been 2 hours long, and that would have been, again, fine, but it just goes to show how little plot there actually is, really. Yeah. And that is, you know, again, I don't mind slow-paced movies, but what I care most about is, you know, the plot. Is it intriguing? And again, all the geopolitical stuff, it dies 1 hour, 20 minutes, like the tension. Oh, are they going to be able to get the spice going on Arrakis? Well, so House Harkonnen have just immediately attacked them. And so the answer is no.
Like the kind of the subtle dynastic politics of it that one might see in a show like Game of Thrones in the early seasons, where it's like there wasn't like a big war going on. It was all just, I know you've likened it to a soap opera, but it's like, people kind of scheming, and you can't actually physically, that's burned into my brain, that criticism. But no, there's like scheming, and they can't actually like physically declare war on each other, but they're undermining each other. And that's obviously, soap opera-ish though it may be, there is some like intrinsic interest to that necessarily dissolves when it just turns into a full-on war.
I wouldn't say that's soap opera-ish. That aspect isn't anyway.
Probably maybe just the banging. The banging made it soap opera-ish.
Yeah, other stuff as well. It's been literally years since I watched Game of Thrones, and I would maybe go back and watch it again.
If you didn't know it ends up terrible.
Yeah, that's the thing. It ends up terrible, so I'm just not going to do that. Anyway, so let's get into the nitpicks now of Dune. How many do you have?
I've got two nitpicks.
So I've got two. You go first.
Right. God. Okay. I don't know. This one's kind of bad actually. This one's crap. I'm gonna say it anyway. I wrote this down. I wrote down like what do the worms eat, because like they're so big, and it just like you'd think there would be a thing. Like it just seems like there's not much food in the desert. That it doesn't really make sense that they're able to be so big. But having said that, I did literally complain about the film being filled with way too much lore. So maybe it's not a bad thing. I don't know. I'm sorry, Luke. And this one's not actually much better. I just thought it was weird that there's a reference to a temperature, and it seems to be in Fahrenheit. Like they say, it's 90 degrees now, it's going to get to 120. Sounds like Fahrenheit to me. I refuse to believe that in the future people will still be using Fahrenheit. They'll have recognized that Celsius is the way to go. You can't change my mind. There we go. Good nitpicks, me, eh?
Maybe it was Celsius.
Yeah, I know, but now I was thinking, like, if it's 90 degrees Celsius, yeah.
Yeah, well, at one point, because I had subtitles on, they said it's going to reach 145. So, yeah, obviously, it's Fahrenheit. And you're right, that's stupid. Stupid. Because that's the thing with Americans. They say, well, Fahrenheit's great because, the scale is from 0 to 100. Which 0 to 30 is fine, to be honest.
Yeah, so we don't struggle with it.
Yeah, and obviously freezing's like 31 Fahrenheit as well, which is stupid. But the thing is, when it goes above 100, well then you're fucked, then aren't you? And then your whole system's crumbled. So you need to use Celsius if it gets that hot. So anyway, my two nitpicks. Paul on the helicopter ride, I guess, out of Arrakis when the Harkonnens have captured him. He doesn't have a gag, right? He doesn't have one.
He doesn't have a gag.
And his mother does. And I don't know, why is there a distinction there?
That is, that is actually a good point. That is a very good, because obviously, the fact that the mum's gagged is very relevant, because she can do the hypnotizing super easy Jedi mind trick. He can't do it so easily. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if he was, you're right, Luke. You are right.
Thank you. And also there is this same musical cue or motif. And it's done over and over again, man. And it's just got very annoying, especially at the end when Paul murders the Fremen guy. And it's like I mean I can't do it. It's like
is it like one of those kind of like Arab wailing kind of sounds?
Yeah, exactly like that. Yes. And the thing is, it happens so often. I don't know why it needs to happen so often. It just at that stage it was very frustrating. I found that. Particularly,
For some reason, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I didn't pick up on it being there all the time. But now you're saying it, I'm like, I can remember it. But I guess I feel like it's probably one of those things where once you notice it, then it's like you can't get it out of your head. But fortunately for me, I did notice it.
No, that's the thing. I don't really think I had it in my head. It just naturally, it's just like, oh, not that sound again. Have you got anything else? Yes. So set in the distant future, the film follows Paul Atreides as his family, the noble House Atreides, is thrust into a war for the deadly and inhospitable desert planet Arrakis. So Paul Atreides, he's this brilliant, gifted young man, a real Mary Sue, or what's the male version?
Gary Sue.
Born into a great destiny beyond his understanding. He must travel to the most dangerous planet in the universe. Well, that's a bit of a stretch, It's the known universe. To ensure the future of his family and his people, as malevolent forces explode into conflict over the planet's exclusive supply of the most precious resource in existence, a commodity capable of unlocking humanity's greatest potential, which is spice. I don't know why this description doesn't say it.
I feel like it's giving me big Joe Rogan talking about DMT kind of energy. Okay. It's like, hey man, have you tried this spice thing? It just like it unlocks your mind.
Well, I mean that's true. It literally does for Paul, doesn't it? So yeah, only
Exactly,
those.
Paul is future Jordan Peterson.
Okay, only those who can conquer their fear will survive. Can he conquer his fear? Because that's the thing. You can substitute a good plot for a character-driven story. And obviously Paul Atreides, he's this main character, but I don't think he has an interesting character arc. I don't think he's an interesting character. I just think he's pretty bland. He's the cliche of he's the one.
Yes, the chosen one. I was thinking that too.
Yeah, he's the chosen one. He's going to bring balance to the Force, and he's going to destroy all the enemies in the galaxy. And all of that shit, and it's like that's great, but that's the thing. He doesn't really. There's no character depth there. There's no depth. He seems to. Every test he kind of half passes, and then he never like fails. There's never a point where he completely fails in doing something, and then he has to have like an introspect. Like he says at the start of his dad, Oscar Isaac, it's like, what if I'm not ready for this or whatever?
Yeah,
and it's like, well, why do you think that? I mean, you seem pretty good at everything you do, And
then he doesn't really have any issues. Also, I feel like his relationship to kind of seeing the future is a bit weird because it's like. He just kind of sees the future, and like he doesn't seem like that motivated by it in a way. Like it's kind of just like he sees the future, but like so take for example when what's his face Jason Momoa dies, and it's like he sees the future of him dying, and then he mentions it, and then it's kind of just forgotten about, and then he dies, and it's like there's kind of nothing really to it. Even though you would think that would be something, I mean, if you compare it to something like the Minority Report, where it's like it's a big part of the character and his conflict that he can see the future. Obviously not true here.
It just seems very shallow. The character, like there's not enough scenes where he gets to you get to really delve into his personality.
Definitely.
Because I think there's the scene when he's in the tent with his mum and he says, "Oh, the Bene Gesserit made me a freak" or whatever.
Yes.
And then his mum hugs him, and that's like.
I was just about to mention that scene because obviously he also has like a vision of himself becoming like a kind of messianic warrior king or kind of like warrior priest.
Yeah, but
and like that's like an interesting idea to like confront the possibility that you might become basically like a warlord that kills people.
Yeah, but the thing is,
like it's kind of just whatever.
She hugs him, and then they forget about it.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, you've brought it up, but you need to follow through. Like you can't just have him say that and then he just continues on with his mission. It just seems, again, so there's a lack of plot and there's a lack of. I don't think this Paul Atreides character is written well. I think you could do a better job. And Timothée Chalamet, I mean, he's like this emo.
He's
kid.
a very sexy guy.
Well, okay, calm down. I'm just saying he's this emo kid. That's the role he's playing. And he can play that, of course, but I'm just thinking he doesn't have a lot to work with in terms of the character. He just needs to look, as you say, beautiful. What do you say? What do you call him?
Sex. I said he was very sexy.
Yeah, he just needs.
Have you heard everyone's talking about this thing called twink death now? Have you seen that on the old Twitter? Twink death.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's hope that he doesn't. That's all I could think about when I was seeing him. I hope he doesn't undergo a twink death.
It happened to DiCaprio. It happened to Alex Jones.
Alex Jones.
And it may happen. It may happen to Chalamet, hopefully not. But yeah, again, very simple plot. There's this, I mean, the plot at the beginning isn't, the first hour and 20 isn't simple. You get to understand all the machinations, but then afterwards, there's this battle. He gets chased and he finds the Fremen, and he'll probably use the Fremen in the. I'm not going to judge the part 2. We'll see what happens in part 2.
Yeah. By the way, did you know so obviously there's the one book, but then there's 5 or 6 other books. It's kind of like because I was kind of looking into it because I was like, oh, this is quite a complicated series, and there's kind of different story arcs, and I think there's about 3 or 4 books dealing with this guy and kind of his story. So it seems like even by the end of part 2, we're not going to get the end of his story, and we need to have 8 of these films to get his complete story. Yes. Which I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, no, you are right. Yeah, but Denis Villeneuve said if they let me make a third one, I will. But like you said, Michael, obviously this is based on a book, Frank Herbert's novel, released in 1965, which is apparently the best-selling sci-fi novel in history.
Well done.
Yeah, congratulations to Frank Herbert for that, beating out Starship Troopers. Yeah. And,
wait, is that actually? Is that actually true? Because I know I should remember that because we reviewed it. Did Starship Troopers really do that well?
Well, it was a novel, that was popular.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You
I mean, I
remember?
don't know the way. Yeah, I thought maybe it was like real, like
Well, I mean, it was.
really
It
up
was
there.
some. I mean, I imagine it was because obviously it got an adaptation. 30 years
Mm.
later, and it was. It was obviously a very fascist book, of course, if you remember.
Yes,
Yes. But yeah,
super
well,
fascist.
this one, of course, the Dune series. This is from Wikipedia. Is a landmark of science fiction. Herbert deliberately suppressed tech in his Dune universe so he could address the politics of humanity rather than the future of humanity's tech, which I like. That is great. I really do like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. For example, a key prehistory event to the novel's present is the uh, Boltarian Jihad. I like how he actually uses the term
Jihad. Wow. Who's a fascist now?
in which all the robot well, he's not advocating for this, but
Oh,
in all the robots and computers were destroyed, eliminating these common elements to science fiction from the novel to allow us to focus on humanity. And of course, they had no idea how to recreate them again, obviously. So
yeah. Well, yeah, I kind of so I liked that aspect. Like, obviously, you get the impression. Like, what I was kind of thinking about is I was like, obviously, in the past, there were like humans that were like tribes, and then they like spread across the whole world, and we're like, oh, that's how it is. But like, what if, like right now, actually, in the grand cosmic scheme of things, we're still like basically just a little tribe, and actually, the real diaspora is going to be us spreading across the galaxy. And we think like Rome and Greece, like they're what it was about, but no, it's going to be Mars versus Saturn. And I was like, that's kind of like an interesting premise to basically imply that, because it does seem like it's a kind of history repeating itself in a way, like, because obviously this does kind of feel aesthetically a lot like it could be Greece and Rome and things like that, but repeating itself with just the technology kind of steps up a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yes, no, that is it is an interesting concept.
Yeah.
Again,
And maybe there'll be a sequel series where it's like just different dimensions fighting each other, and like, oh man, I miss those simpler times when it was just one galaxy.
Okay, Herbert said Paul's Messiah figure was inspired by the Arthurian legend, and that this here's something crazy. The scarcity of water on Arrakis was a metaphor for oil.
Oh yeah.
I mean, actually, I'm thinking about, shouldn't spice be the metaphor for oil? I thought that was obvious.
Spice is DMT.
Okay, as well as air and water itself, and the shortage of resources caused by overpopulation, which is interesting.
Oh, that's a bit fascist.
Yes. So obviously there's Middle Eastern and Islamic references. Due to the similarities between some of Herbert's terms and ideas and actual words and concepts in the Arabic language, as well as the series' Islamic undertones, a Middle East influence on Herbert's work has been noted repeatedly. Well,
yes, that's interesting because I think they refer to him as like the Mahdi, as like MAH, and I know that the Arabic word for like the Messiah is the Mahdi, MAHDI, and I was like, oh, that is weird.
Yeah,
I guess it was intentional.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, obviously, immediately I thought, well, he's basing this off of stuff in the Middle East, because you have these people who of course, they're the indigenous to the Middle East, and you have like the colonial powers coming in and taking their resources, which would be oil, until they managed to get control of them once Britain and France, the likes of them, left that area. And so now Qatar can buy Manchester United. So that's...
that is it. Yeah, like he should have taken the analogy further.
Yes, it's funny how the world works. But yeah, so... Again, I thought that was, the spice is oil. I that's what I assumed, and it's the Middle East. But I don't know. Apparently, apparently water is oil instead.
Yeah, that seems a bit weird.
Yeah.
Because spice. Because obviously, I mean, water is important, but it's not like it's not a global commodity. Sorry, not global. It's not like a galactic commodity, because it would only be important for the people who live in the desert. Whereas obviously oil is important for everybody, just as spice would be. So spice makes more sense as the analogy.
Yes, and obviously...
The hack, Schubert the hack, Sherbert even, Herbert, what's his name?
Herbert, yeah.
There you go.
And so there's obviously other themes of declining empires, there's gender dynamics, heroism. I am showing you the superhero syndrome and your own participation in it. That's what Frank Herbert said regarding Paul. So yeah, there's basically a bunch of themes which the movie we're actually reviewing doesn't really go into that much, to be honest, because it's just adapting this incredibly big novel, and I don't think Denis Villeneuve is particularly interested in that. He's just interested in like the world building. That's what he's primarily interested in, and telling this grand story rather than getting into the finer details of the themes and stuff that Frank Herbert's novel presents. But yeah, obviously, Michael, this is not the first cinematic adaptation of Dune, is it?
No, I believe I'm right in saying, and I know this, there was, in the past, it's only been weirdos, because I believe the first one was by David Lynch. Is that true?
So,
yeah.
David Lynch's 1984 Dune, which I have not seen, but I
No,
have seen.
I was thinking to myself, like, if I was serious about this podcast, I would watch that, but I didn't.
Well, I've seen clips of it. I've seen the Red Letter Media review of Dune 2021 and the 1984 version. And they obviously praise the 2021 version a lot more and just say the 1984 version was very weird and it didn't really work. And David,
you know what? Actually, I looked up now. I did not know until now that the 1984 version was poorly received. I mean, it makes sense; it would have been, since it didn't go anywhere. But I genuinely didn't know until just now.
Yeah, I mean, it was directed by David Lynch, who, you know,
he's a weirdo.
He's a weirdo, so he emphasized the weird points, and he tried to fit everything into one movie.
Ralph Bakshi style.
And I imagine, obviously, you know, the world building just wasn't as good because it was in 1984. But this is from Wikipedia, so asking whether Villeneuve had seen Lynch's adaptation. He said he had, well, obviously, and respected both Lynch and the film, but chose not to build on any elements from it. Saying, good. I'm going back to the book and going to the images that came out when I read it. To be fair, I have heard him say that. Like, I watched an interview with him and James Cameron. They were talking to each other, and he was like, "Yeah, I just wanted to recreate what I saw as a kid, you know, reading the book in my head." So I do agree that was his primary influence, and he wasn't just like, "I need to go as far away from the 1984 version as possible."
Yeah.
But he elaborated on this, adding, "There are parts that I love and other elements that I am less comfortable with." So it's like, I remember being half satisfied. And yeah, I imagine maybe fans of the novel were like, it's great to see this adaptation on the big screen and see it come to life, but it is shit. So, you know, it's not so good, is it? And he felt he had to make the film with a different sensibility. Again, having seen clips from the 1984 version, I think he's done that. It is definitely, as you would suspect, a lot weirder in 1984, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, in my head, I'm trying not to just imagine it as, like, for some reason, it's just becoming Flash Gordon. Like, when I try and think about it in my head, I'm just, like, imagining, I don't know, like, it would have had that kind of cheesy way that everybody talks in, like, old films. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of want to watch it now. Now that I found out, before, when I didn't know it was poorly received, I was uninterested. But now I know that it's considered quite bad. I'm like, yes, let's watch it.
Well, yeah, it's the plot is very rushed as well. And
yeah,
because they try to fit everything in. Obviously David Lynch tries to be as weird as possible. He likes the weird elements of stuff, which to be fair, there is some weird stuff in this movie, but it is given it's given sort of a veneer of respectability. So yeah, Harkonnen, the head of the Harkonnens, obviously he's this weirdo, just this complete fucking weird guy. And it's very disturbing. With the Lynch movie, I don't think you get this evil vibe. It's just like, oh, look, here's one of the characters, and it's more off-putting if you do it that way. You know?
I see.
Yeah, because you're not treating it with this
kind of foreboding.
Yes, this foreboding nature. Yes, you're not doing that, which you should when you see something that disturbing. You know. Which this film does. So maybe that's part of.
Yeah. This movie, it feels very kind of like very kind of, I guess, dark. And there is like a fancier word for it, but I guess, I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of like the phrase like cosmic horror, where it's kind of like just like, have you seen that meme where it's like, oh boy, man-made horrors beyond my comprehension? Yes. Like that kind of idea of just like not really.
And that's the head of the Harkonnens. And I feel like the 84 Dune movie is just like, well, here's the head of the Harkonnen. That's who he is, so deal with it. So in the distant future, Duke Leto of House Atreides, ruler of the ocean planet Caladan, is assigned by the Padishah Emperor Shaddam IV of House
Saddam Hussein
of House Carino to replace House Harkonnen as the fief holder of Arrakis. Did you get all that?
Yes, I did. I kind of like picked up that idea, like when they have the little meeting of the guy, and like I was like, well, I don't know if I picked up all of those exact names, but I was like, okay, so there is this is an empire, and I guess there are kind of vassals, or kind of part of the bureaucracy.
Well, let me just
and their job.
Explain a bit more. So. Arrakis is a harsh desert planet and the only source of spice, a valuable psychotic drug that imparts heightened vitality and awareness to its users. It is critical to faster than light interstellar travel as it grants Space Guild navigators the limited prescience needed for safe navigation. Shaddam intends to have House Harkonnen retake the planet with the secret aid of his Sardaukar troops, eradicating House Atreides, whose spreading influence he considers a threat to his power. Leto is reluctant, but he sees the advantages of controlling Arrakis and forming an alliance with its native population, skilled fighters known as the Fremen. Okay, that's it.
Yes, that's the basic premise, which is not a bad premise.
I just want to say that's a lot of background, a lot of lore.
Yes, I think that's the thing, because it is like a massive info dump when you find it all out.
That's what I'm going to ask. Does the movie communicate all of this well in terms of, do we understand all of this? And is it just, and it isn't just thrown at the audience here in exposition dumps?
Yeah, I can give my take on that, is, I think I did understand it all, but I also think like the way it was revealed, in terms of being thrown at the audience through exposition dumps, like it was almost kind of boring. Like it was, because I almost feel like in a way, and this is going to feel embarrassing for you if you say you couldn't understand it, but I almost feel like it was kind of too easy to understand, where it was like they just laid it out like, yes, they're trying to undermine us by sending to this inhospitable planet, but we're going to get one over on them by taming the inhospitable planet and becoming even more powerful. That seemed to be like the plan from the Aedes or whatever they're called.
Yeah, Atreides.
Atreides. I literally said like it's the easiest name to remember.
Yes. Well, see, the thing is, I think yes, it is easy to understand, which is good. That's the thing. There's a lot of lore, and I think I get that, and you get that. I think people should get that. But the thing is, you said, well, there's exposition dumps. I don't really think that's the case, honestly, because you have Paul Atreides, learn about the spice and the Fremen from some audio. And this audio that literally just tells him.
It's like this Wikipedia robot.
Yeah, and you could have had him, had a teacher, give him the lesson. That would have been better. But apart from that, you have Paul. He has conversations with Duncan Idaho, which is a great name, of course, Duncan Idaho.
Yes.
His father, Paul Atreides, and also this Gurney guy, who basically they explain the geopolitical situation in Iraq as well. And I think the scenes, you get an inkling into Paul's character. They don't really do anything with what he says, again, when he's talking to his dad. Showing he's and you establish, obviously, he's a great fighter, which is necessary. And you establish these characters. And so, yeah, I think these scenes are fine. And you are, generally now aware of the geopolitical machinations going on. So I do think, in general, the audience can get a good hold of the situation in Arrakis, and I think it is done well. This is how you do it. He has conversations with these three different characters who you all need to know. Well, you don't really need to know Gurney. He doesn't really do much, honestly. But
Gurney's the what's his face, Thanos.
Yeah. And yes, you could argue his dad really does, but his conversation with his dad, yes, he does rather spell it out, but, his dad is trying to teach him, his dad is a mentor, obviously. There has to be a lot of explaining, and I think it's done in the best way possible, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can necessarily agree it's done in the best way possible, which isn't me saying I can think of a better way to do it. It's just, let's not close the door on the possibility of better things. Let's not limit ourselves by saying, what's the word? Perfection's the enemy of progress.
How else would you do it?
I knew you were going to say that, but no, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying, especially seeing as I don't really know all of like the source material and things like that.
Well, you're establishing these characters, the relationship that Paul has.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I mean, I'll say this: it was a good way of doing it. I think one of the problems, I guess what I'll say is this, because, I was kind of like, it feels like a bit like everyone's just telling you things. I will say, I think because the film in general doesn't have that much plot, it means that, because obviously what do they say? They say, show, don't tell. And I do think like, because there's not as much kind of action happening, it means that proportionally, it feels more like you are just being told things. So I guess what I would say is that I don't think it's the way you're told things in and of itself that's bad. I would agree with you there. But I think maybe there's an aspect of, because you're not seeing as much happening.
Show, don't tell. Like, he's on Caladan.
No, yeah. No, yeah. The thing is, what I'm saying is, so I'm not saying show, don't tell. But what I'm saying is, in terms of like holistically, the movie does, because obviously sometimes you do just need to tell things. Like, there's no way around it. Yeah. I'm saying that the movie does more telling than showing, which I think makes it feel a little bit more like, a bit more PowerPointy at some points.
Well, it does do showing as well, but that's the thing. I'm fine with them having conversations because, again, this character is learning about the situation. So it's
he's what they call it, the fish out of water.
Yeah, I mean, not really. So he's
a fish growing up in water.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
I don't know why that's a really dumb phrase.
That's the thing. So it's fine if he's been if he's been taught this, and you're establishing characters and his relationship, and aspects of his character as well alongside the exposition. So I'm completely fine with that, and I think so that bit is good. But let's get on to I guess the concept in general of Arrakis being this poison chalice. I like that concept a lot. I think that's a very interesting concept,
Yes.
And I like that as someone, again, who is into geopolitical machinations. I like that kind of storyline in movies or in TV as well, because it's realistic and it's fascinating to see how things are going to play out. Nothing is obvious, and the stakes are obviously high because you're dealing with, obviously, geopolitical stuff. The stakes are as high as they can be. Plus the storyline of the Emperor letting House Atreides take Arrakis from House Harkonnen, to fuck them over. That's an intriguing thing to do.
Yes. I like that too.
Yeah.
I think that it's a really good premise for
it's a great premise.
that kind of complex politicking, where it's not like it's underhanded. That's the word. And like underhanded inherently makes it more interesting, because it could just be, there's this hack called Tolkien, and this hack called George Lucas, and they were just like, well, what if there were like bad guys and they just try to attack everybody? And it's like, okay, snooze. But this genius comes in like, no, what if the bad guys are actually, using complex politicking, where they're actually like giving underhanded thing, more interesting.
They're setting a trap.
Yes.
Yeah, they're setting a trap, and it's like, oh, Arrakis, this great planet where there's spice. It's a very good premise. Herbert really nailed it. And again, this isn't Villeneuve who created this. This is, of course, Herbert who created this premise, but obviously it's part of the movie. So
yeah.
So let's talk about background stuff, Michael. Sorry, more background stuff. So, and this is about the Bene Gesserit. So, Leto's concubine, Lady Jessica, is an acolyte of the Bene Gesserits, an exclusive sisterhood whose members possess advanced physical and mental abilities. As part of their centuries-long breeding program, they instructed her to bear a daughter whose son would become the Kawasats Haderach.
I'm glad that you're doing the Wikipedia reading.
A Bene Gesserit and messianic superbeing with the clairvoyance necessary to guide humanity to a better future. However, she disobeyed and bore a son, Paul, and Jessica teaches him Bene Gesserit disciplines. Paul confides in Jessica and Duncan that he is troubled by visions of the future. In response, the Reverend Mother and Imperial Truthsayer, Gaius Helen Mahayim, visits Kaladin and subjects him to a death alternative test to assess his humanity and impulse control, which he passes. Again, wow, that is a lot of background on the Bene Gesserit, right?
Yes, yeah. And again, it was one of those things, actually, I will say there were a few moments in this film which were kind of nice, where it was like, going into it, I didn't understand what was going on, and yet, by the end of it, I was like, okay, I do understand. Because like going into it, I was like, what, why are they, who's this random priest person? Like, what's happening? Why are they putting his hand in the box and things like that? And it's like, within, a few minutes after that, I was like, oh wait, no, okay, I understand basically what's happened, which is impressive.
Again, a lot of lore, and I'm going to ask, does the movie communicate all of this well, in terms of, do we all understand all of this? And, it isn't just thrown at the audience, right, with exposition dumps.
Yeah, I would say this is even better, personally, in terms of, like, I feel like the way this was communicated, like, I didn't really feel like, with this stuff in particular, I was being spoon-fed information at all.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, at one point, the mother, Mahayim, whatever, does say to Lady Jessica, you should have bore a daughter. You were instructed not to bear a son, but again, there's no reason for her to say that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Actually,
it was very no reason for her to say that. It was very obvious, but so that's not great. But again, the scene where Paul puts his hand in the box, that's an interesting scene which does a decent job. But the thing is, a lot is thrown at you, and I'm not sure. I think overall it's fine. But it's just at this stage I was thinking, like, God, so much has been thrown at you. It's just like the amount you have to absorb, and I was trying to absorb everything without looking at Wikipedia or whatever. I was trying to get it all. But yeah, obviously you now know Paul is the one, which is again disappointing because, like we said, it's cliche, but of course it's part of the novel. So what you're going to do? And again, if it's in look, let's see what happens in part 2. But if it's, again, Frank Herbert's talking about the fact that this hero is created, and what, this heroic figure, this messianic figure, the damage that this messianic figure can do if you make him a hero. So maybe that's, I'm not sure, because I haven't read the book. I don't know. Maybe that's what part 2 explores. And if that's the case, it's not cliche, and it's great, and it's, a subversion.
Yeah, I think there'll be some kind of twist
if it's
in the narrative.
Well, twist of the narrative, I guess, and it'll be a subversion of the hero trope, which is fine.
I was thinking that, subvert expectations.
Yes.
And Rian Johnson for Dune Part 2.
Yeah, and the thing is, again, Paul in this scene, so I think, again, things are communicated fine. It's just, it's just a lot to take in. But with Paul, again, in the scene, he shows so little emotion, and I get other times he doesn't, and that's fine. But like this seems like, you should really, be a bit more. When his mother tells him about the Bene Gesserit, and what is it? He overhears like he's going to be lead his people to a new glorious future, and he's just like, well, so that's the plan, huh?
Yeah, he doesn't have like a strong reaction to it, which kind of very much undercuts him as a character.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like, give me a bit more, man. He doesn't have to just sulk around the desert so much. He just doesn't say anything. He's just a very boring, dull character. Which again is just not that interesting, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, I 100% agree that it's this big thing, and he just, it's just hard to relate to him because he doesn't react in a way that a normal person would.
Yeah, it's like you've just been told you're like Galaxy Jesus. It's just like, so that's the plan, huh? Right, great. Anyway, so House Atreides arrives at Arrakeen, fortress stronghold on Arrakis. Again, I love how harsh the desert climate is portrayed.
Yeah.
And we'll get onto that in a bit. Let's just talk about, I guess, the scale of everything. Because, obviously, I talked about at the start, this movie is very immersive. It feels really cool to look at, as you would expect from a Denis Villeneuve film. But, yeah, it feels, like, incredible. Like, I know some people who read the novel. I haven't read the novel, but some people who read the novel who are like, when I was reading this novel as a kid, this is what I imagined Dune to look like.
Yeah,
this is
like seeing it brought to life.
Yes, this is exactly how I imagined it being brought to life. And so the production design, just the scale, it feels like Denis Villeneuve, he nailed it, right? Or Villeneuve.
Yes.
Did he nail it, Michael?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, like you, I also haven't read the novel, but I 100% agree that it seems like this is what it would be like. If I was watching Dune, if I knew that I was going to watch something called Dune, then this is what I would expect to see. This was like, there wasn't any moment where I was like, oh, this doesn't seem right. As meaningless as that is, as somebody who hasn't really seen the film.
Yes.
Is that a good answer? There we go.
Yeah. Who hasn't read the novel, you mean?
Yeah, sorry, yeah. I don't know why. I just couldn't talk for a second there.
The set design for the film was done by production designer Patrice Vermette. Vermette stated that the set design for Dune would be guided by the need to ground the story into realistic settings to help the audience believe in the extraordinary elements. I think that is exactly the case. Yes, it is. Obviously, it's futuristic, no doubt, but it isn't. It's just very like barren and brutalist, I guess, with some aspects of the architecture. I mean, I'm just thinking, maybe it's not brutalist. I'm just thinking in general. Like,
it's kind of like it's like people always talk about like that kind of futurism, but like futurism with a twist.
Yeah.
Like Middle East. It's obviously Afrofuturism is the good example.
Yeah.
Which obviously you see with Wakanda, but I think there's also this idea of like Arab futurism. So it's like not the boring old Star Trek and Star Wars. But like futurism, but with a cultural aesthetic of kind of foreignness.
Well, there's just no. It's just very practical. I think the aesthetic.
Yeah.
That's why I feel it's just very practical. There's no, what is the function of this? This particular place. It's a room. Okay, well, it has, it's a big room. It has, there's nothing fancy about any of this, and that helps. It does help set the tone. And I think yes, it does help the audience to believe in the extraordinary elements as well. So yeah, I think that is good. It does ground the story, and if you ground the story, then obviously people are more likely to believe the fanciful stuff. Because if everything was crazy and fanciful in terms of the setting, then yeah, I don't think people would be able to get into it as more. Because clearly he wants to make this as realistic as possible. And then it's tough to do with some of the stuff in this movie, but yeah, I think the setting helps. And yeah, they sought to make the sets as realistic and immersive as possible, using minimal set extension and no green screens, which you love to see.
Yeah. I was thinking about that when I was, it's one of those things where like you just remember like George Lucas really had no excuse, and I know it's like everyone's dunks on the prequels, but like every now and then I just think to myself like the actual world and like actual real environments are definitely interesting enough that he didn't have to do everything in front of a green screen.
Yes, this movie won the most awards at the Oscars, by the way, last year, with 6, including Best Sound, Best Original Score, Best Film Editing, Best Production Design, and Best Visual Effects, and Best Cinematography. So again, all the technical stuff, yes. What we're talking about here, of course, Best Production Design, yes, obviously. Best Visual Effects, yes. There's no issues with the visual effects. They all look great when they're used. And Best Cinematography. The cinematography, again, is amazing. And combine that with the production designs, you got a really really beautiful movie. A movie which you can really watch and again immerse yourself with.
Yeah. And I think it does. Obviously, I think there are, you can make a good movie in some sense, without needing the visual effects to be on point. But the fact it is a nice thing.
Yeah.
It's a nice thing that nowadays with the technology we have, you actually can just make it look really convincing.
Yes, it is nice. So during a flight, they spot a sandworm approaching a spice harvester with a stranded crew, whom they successfully rescue. Paul's exposure to the spice triggers intense premonitions. However, so yeah, it's just this scene is just a really cool scene. With everything explained. You know the stakes and the rules, and so what's happening when the rules are established in a scene like this, in an action scene where some people are trying to escape. That for me is fantastic because again, that just increases the tension because you know exactly what has to happen, right? For them.
Yeah.
So also, Paul has these premonitions, which again keep on happening. Which I don't. Do you think there's too many premonitions in the movie in general?
Yeah, I would say so because it does become, like I kind of already said, an issue of what's the point with them. They just happen and there's not really any substance to them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I do think that is a bad thing.
Yeah. Again, I get the sense that happened a lot in the book.
Yeah.
But anyway, the shot of the sandworm, by the way, is great. That's a great shot of the sandworm. The first shot of it, of course, it was just below the sand. Naturally, up until that point, so that's fantastic. So, of course, then we have the betrayal of Yue. You can never trust those Asians, can you, Michael?
No, yeah.
Even in the year 10,000,
they're still scheming.
He disables Arakin's shields and allows Harkonnen and Sardaukar troops to invade Arakin. Did you get that? Good.
Yes.
He incapacitates Leto and tells him he made a deal to deliver him to Baron Harkonnen. That's what he's called, the Baron, which is a perfect name for him. That guy is the Baron, right? He's not like the leader. He's the Baron. In exchange for freeing his captive wife. Okay, so again, this is part of the movie which is disappointing, and not just because it kills off the intrigue in the plot after, but there was this build-up to this war, or the battle between House Atreides and House Harkonnen. And then it just happens. I mean, the thing is, the previous day, Leto Atreides says he needs the spice, otherwise, he'll be done. He knows the Emperor will come for him. He knows it's a poison chalice, and he's like, hey, I need this spice. And then, literally the next day, Harkonnen invade, and then that's it. It is over. We don't see the Emperor giving Harkonnen the green light. We don't see him look at the spice production and say, oh well, look at how badly it's gone. We don't see Paul Atreides in a meeting. They have a council meeting, or Leto Atreides, sorry. They have that council meeting and they're looking at the numbers, the spice numbers, and it's like, oh, the spice is really low. It's like half. Yeah. It's like half of what we need to produce, and the tension is ratcheting up because oh well, that gives the Emperor and the Harkonnens.
Exactly, tension. Yes. That sense of it's going to happen.
Yes, gives them an excuse to attack. It's just all of a sudden they attack. It's surely, because that's the big. You've been building up to this. You can't just have it happen just there. With seemingly there should have been more build up. Given what stage this geopolitical fight behind the scenes was at, there should have been more build up.
Yeah, in terms of pacing, I mean, also, obviously, we know that the way this film ends is, to put it mildly, not climactic.
Yes.
And it's kind of they could have easily, they could have had this whole film, 2.5 hours, that's not a bad length, building up this aspect, and then have the big battle at the end, and that would work better. Not, again, obviously... I don't imagine many people would necessarily think. I think it's obvious we're not just saying, oh, we need more action because.
No, but I'm not saying more
drug.
More action.
It's more like
I'm saying the action needs to be pushed further back.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's not the action that is the key thing. It's the intrigue around it and kind of building up to it. And yeah, I agree with you. I think if they would have basically had more time focusing on that build up, more time with, because obviously you mentioned that they're trying to bring up the spices, so you can have more focus on them trying to get that, and then obviously at the end of the film you get the action coming and it's it's built up and we know it's happening, oh no, what's gonna happen, and then it's boom, and it's crazy.
It's a double problem. It's a double problem because it happens too soon in terms of just the machinations going on. I've used that word a lot, but it happens. It should happen later. Like Paul Atreides is like he's just got here and he's just started producing the spice, and then all of a sudden, Harkonnens are invading. Okay, that it should have taken longer. And obviously that's an issue. It happens too soon, and then the issue is it kills the political intrigue, and it kills the fascination I have with the plot as well. This should have happened like 30 minutes later. It happens an hour 20 minutes into the movie. If that happened an hour 50 minutes, and you have another half an hour build up, which I would have loved, because that was the main thing that was gripping to me regarding this movie. And I think you still have enough time. You have like half an hour or so remaining to have Paul find the Fremen, which I don't think is that, because again I'm
it doesn't need that much time dedicated to it.
I'm pretty sure you could do that. Obviously you'd have to cut some stuff and squeeze some stuff, but I think it would be a better movie overall. I think this was really, and maybe, hey look, reading the book, this is how it happened, nothing else happened in between the point where, well, basically maybe the Harkonnens attacked really quickly as soon as the Atreides got to Arrakis. But that's the point of an adaptation. You can change stuff if that is the case.
Yes, that's an interesting point, because it's just really coincidental. I happen to be right now. I know you've maybe know this. I've started up a casual effort to try and get my own scripted reviews off the ground, because I like talking about movies as you do. And right now I happen to be working on something to do with adaptation, shockingly. And one of the things I always talk about, and I suppose we'll talk about this when we get on to well, no, I mean, we talked about it when we talked about Two Towers, where it's like, but I mean, you can see it in pretty much every single one of the Lord of the Rings adaptations, where stuff was cut out and stuff was added in to make it work better with the kind of ideal structure and pacing of a film. Where obviously I mean, we kind of spoke about it, like how with the Two Towers in the book, like the big battle at Helm's Deep happens in the middle, kind of a bit like this film. But obviously Peter Jackson, being normal, was like, no, obviously we should push it backwards. At the end of the third book, Saruman randomly shows up and starts attacking the Shire, and it's like Peter Jackson's like, no, that's going to take away from the kind of climactic quality. So that's the thing, like this film I think is maybe kind of too faithful for its own good, and in that sense the whole point of an adaptation, kind of like you said, in terms of the talent and skill on display, is making it work better for the medium that it's in. And I feel like it's definitely true to say that this film fails in that regard.
Yeah. Also, the Atreides house, absolutely destroyed. And aren't they going to be like the most powerful house?
No, yeah. I mean, I think I've mentioned this before. Like, a lot of fantasy adventure films have a problem with numbers. Star Wars has this problem, especially like the sequels, where it's like, you're just kind of, oh wait, so now this guy's in charge, and wait, how many people are there left? And wait, the rebellion's only got like one ship full of people, and it's kind of just like I thought they were the ruling power, like
they just
2 weeks ago. Why? What happened to them?
Yeah,
and like that's kind of how it is here.
And again, we talk about, we don't want more action, we don't want a better battle or whatever. I mean, that's the thing. That's not the main problem, but it would be cool if the battle was a bit longer. If Atreides,
and it had more of a sense of like being worthy of the destruction of this house, because it's kind of like, this is a massive house, you think like they're being destroyed, this should be this big moment, and it's kind of just like, oh.
And also the fact that it happens only an hour 20 in, that's also that makes them seem worse than they are built up to be as well. If it happened later in the movie, of course that'd be better for other reasons, but if it happened later and also there was a bigger battle, it was harder for the Harkonnens to do this, then that would make it seem like, this Atreides downfall, this is a massive event in this empire. Anyway, so let's talk about obviously the Asian doctor. He makes a deal with the Baron,
the devil.
Yes, to free his captive wife, and I like the fact that he puts a poison gas capsule in his teeth, because he knows.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah, he knows he might get betrayed. I like that. And obviously he tells him his wife's already dead, and then he kills him, and then Leto releases the gas, killing himself and everyone inside. Although the Baron survives but is wounded.
Which I think kind of makes sense in terms of like, you got to keep him around so we're at least like invested in the guy getting revenge.
I mean, as well, it probably happens in the novel.
As well.
But I mean, obviously it makes sense because from Herbert's perspective. But the Baron. Do you like his design? Because that's the thing. He seems, this is Skarsgård or whatever, Stellan Skarsgård. Yeah. Which is a weird person to play for this role, because of course Stellan Skarsgård isn't fat, but it works. Like this design is great. He seems very evil, I love the shot of him in the black ooze. That's a pretty cool shot. And again, I don't know. I haven't read the novel. Haven't seen the 1984 version. This guy is like a great villain. Like in general, a great design, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's swings and roundabouts because, sometimes it can be interesting to have your villain be kind of just like a regular guy because that speaks to, but then obviously sometimes also you can have your villain be a horrible, grotesque-looking monster because that's like quite a common trope in, fantasy where evil people look evil. And I wouldn't say either is better or worse than the other, but what I would say is obviously if you're going to go down the fantasy route of being like, yeah, evil people need to look evil, then they did a good job. Like if you do that, you need to do a good job at it, and they did. Because obviously the worst of both worlds would be like if you wanted your evil guy to look evil, and then he didn't even look that impressive, because then you're getting neither of, you're doing basically what you've chosen to do poorly.
Yes.
And they didn't do that.
Yes. So the Harkonnens capture Paul and Jessica, though the latter kills their captors using the Bene Gesserit skill known as the Voice. And that's an interesting scene. Again, Paul only half succeeds.
Yeah,
that's it.
I will say this probably could have been a nitpick actually, but basically the bit where like their whole logic is, oh, we can't kill them because we promised we wouldn't kill them, so we'll just leave them out in the desert where they're definitely going to die. It did remind me of this one line in The Simpsons, which I know I'm not allowed to reference, but I'm doing it anyway. Where they get captured by pirates, and the pirates they're going to be like basically made to walk the plank, and the pirate's like, for the record, it is the ocean that will kill you, not us. that's how I kind of felt about this guy. Like, for the record, it is the desert that will kill you, not us. And it's like, okay, fine, great. But it's like, how far does that logic go? Because you could be like, can they just push them off a building and be like, for the record, it's the ground that will kill you, not us?
No, because if you jump into the ocean, that won't kill you. But if you push someone off a building, that will. So that's the difference.
Yeah, I guess that's it. Like there has to be like a degree of survivability.
Yeah, exactly.
In order for it to be, not murder.
And I mean, obviously, Harkonnens, they've got good lawyers. They exploit that loophole. But anyway,
that's it.
So Paul has visions of a holy war spreading across the universe in his name, which again, that's interesting. It's interesting to dive into. Like, there's a version of the Messiah. This messianic figure, which hopefully the second movie does. I don't know if it will because I haven't read the novel. So I don't know if we're off base here, but that would be cool. Judging by Herbert's quote, that seems likely though. But yeah, again, this is the problem I think with the second half of the movie, because it's just setting up the sequel. It's setting up the next movie.
Yeah,
like this movie needs a sequel. Obviously, he's just seen these visions of the future, and it's like, well, obviously, we're not going to get to that in this movie, are we? So that is the problem. Like the intrigue from the movie is gone, and we're just setting up the next part of the of this sequel trilogy. See, that doesn't make sense. This duology. Is that
duology? Yeah.
Right. Maybe it will be a trilogy. I don't know.
Well, like I say, considering the number of books, a trilogy would be a weird choice, but who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. So the design for Arrakeen was influenced by the book's description of Arrakis' climate, stating that it's the biggest residency ever built by humankind. We didn't really talk about Arrakeen. Obviously, it's a cool design, like everything.
Yes, that's the city.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is also a response as a colonial entity that took over the planet for the exploitation of a natural resource, the spice. The spice, yeah, everyone loves the spice. That's the thing, though. Obviously, Arrakeen is in a desert, and the desert is a character, Michael, isn't it? The desert is a character, just like Lawrence of Arabia. The desert is a character. In Lawrence of Arabia, the desert was the metaphor for the desert was it's like a canvas, and Lawrence can paint his own picture. In the canvas of a desert because it was empty. And in this movie, the desert is what it is an ocean. It's like it's empty.
Yes.
It's empty. You can't survive there, and that is the. There's a good movie from a YouTuber called, I think it was Atlas or something, who says oceans are deserts, and
yes, Atlas. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Geo Atlas or something like that.
Some shit like that. Yeah, oceans are deserts. Yeah. Because it's like oceans. There's just nothing happens in the ocean, and
and like oases are like islands.
Yeah, exactly. And oceans are desert, and that's the theme. Like the desert is horrific. It's a horrible place that is emphasized over and over again. And so that is cool. When a place becomes a character, isn't it?
Yeah. Like that. You feel the character of the environment.
Yeah, that's a great.
Which really works.
That's a great phrase. The character of the environment. Yeah, it's great to see that. So Paul and Jessica are found by Duncan and Kynes. They head to an old research station, but are found by the Sardaukar. Paul discloses his plan to marry one of the daughters to avert the civil war. But that doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I was gonna say that. Like this whole section, it seemed a bit weird because I was kind of like, why did they find them? Why did any of this?
Well,
like this bit here.
Duncan needs to sacrifice himself.
Yeah.
So you need that character death, and you need, to be fair, it is a cool scene when Jason Momoa decides to kill 10 guys. That's fun. That is pretty good.
Yeah, that's cool.
The thing is, he has this reputation that is built up, and he lives up to it, and that's always nice to see. And do you like the fact that the guns are worthless? By the way, we didn't really talk about this until this point. The guns are worthless, and stabbing is the only way to kill people because they've got this this protective shield, which again looks so much. You've got to see how it looks in the 1984 version. It's like have you seen the movie Interstellar?
Yes, I have.
The robot in Interstellar. Yeah. Everyone wears like see-through versions of the robot. Like big blocky suits, which don't look that great.
No, yeah.
Yes. So this, I think it's a neat idea because it's more fun to see people stab people than shoot people, right?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's better action. So it's a neat idea. So well done to Frank Herbert there. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Yeah. I mean, like that's the thing. I mean, obviously you see it with Star Wars too.
Yes.
I suppose while we're at it, I need to mention this now. I was thinking this film, if it wanted to be, or this premise, it could have been part of the Star Wars universe, and they would have made so much more money if they called this let's say, for example, they just pretended and they just erased everybody's memory of the fact that Dune was a relevant thing. They called it Star Wars Jedi Origins. Because if you think about it, it's Timothy Chalamet, he's got this magical ability to connect with things, and everyone's using swords to fight each other, and it's all you need is just to have that ability advance to from premonition to moving things with your mind, have the swords turn into light swords, and it's suddenly you've got a Star Wars origin story. So there we go.
You got a Stuka.
Now you got a Stuka.
So in the deep desert, Paul and Jessica encounter Stilgar's tribe, including Chani, the girl in Paul's visions.
Zendaya.
Yeah, Zendaya. Imagine having visions and dreaming of Zendaya all day.
Oh yeah, I couldn't imagine it. Crazy. Not me.
So this is after they do their stepovers in the desert, obviously.
Yes, stepovers.
Yeah, a couple of Ronaldo chops as well. Fremen warrior Jameis challenges Stilgar's lenience to them and challenges Paul to a ritual duel to the death, which Paul wins. Against Jessica's wishes, Paul joins the Fremen to fulfill his father's goals of bringing peace to Arrakis. So yeah, again, you got the end of the movie. Like you said, it's not very climactic. Obviously, he kills this guy. Obviously, he's not going to die, so there wasn't really that much tension. And obviously, he's going to join the Fremen because that's what everything's been building up to. It is interesting that I guess he's wants to the lessons that his father taught him. He's going to try and follow those lessons. He understands the power. That's the thing. He just understands the power of the Fremen because his father told him to. He doesn't really come to that conclusion on his own, seemingly. Which it could have been better if he's no, I'm choosing this path because of these reasons. Instead of just saying no, this is my destiny or whatever. Because again, it's he's just following what his premonitions say rather than an actual strategic move, really.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, which is
he's just I've got to do it because I know it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, obviously, again, Lawrence of Arabia vibes. This white kid is going off with. I mean, they are ethnic in general, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Ben and wait, who's the guy who plays the kind of chieftain? He's a Hispanic actor, isn't he? Yeah, Javier Bardem. Yeah, sorry, I couldn't remember which one it was. But yeah, obviously he's some kind of Spanish. I don't know whether or not he's Mexican or Spanish. There we go.
Okay.
And then obviously Zendaya is, I guess, half black would be my assumption.
Yeah.
So they're just generic, not white.
Yes, and obviously, that guy, what's he called? Who's the actor who plays Lawrence in Lawrence of Arabia?
Timothy O'Toole? Timothy O'Toole?
That's it, O'Toole, yeah.
Oh no, Peter O'Toole.
Peter O'Toole, yeah, that was the Peter O'Toole, yeah, I knew O'Toole was right. Just like Peter O'Toole, Timothy Chalamet is beautiful. This beautiful white kid, joins the desert tribe to lead them. And over.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah, all we need is the colonization would have been so much more successful if they just sent sexy white twinks out to win everybody over.
Yeah, the Arabs love their sexy white twinks. And the Arab stand-ins, which is as the Fremen, and they're going to overthrow their oppressors, their ugly oppressors, just like how the Arabs overthrew the Turks. And just like how the Fremen are going to overthrow the Harkonnens. The question is, of course, what was great about Lawrence of Arabia in terms of the geopolitical stuff was that the British were using Lawrence and the respect the Arabs had for him to get rid of the Turks, so then the British could come in and take over. Paul doesn't want to fuck over the Fremen, right now at least, but it'd be interesting to see if maybe he does the same thing. Maybe he wins power in Arrakis and fucks over the Fremen. I'm not sure how that would go down, but I'm just like, maybe the parallels to Lawrence of Arabia grow stronger. I'm not sure though. Again, who knows? I could be way off base there.
That's an interesting idea. Like, again, it's kind of, I mean, we already mentioned that what's his face, David Lynch tried to fit the whole story into one thing, and that whole question of, we all like to remember the time when Ralph Bakshi had to condense the entire Lord of the Rings into one film because the studio said, and I quote, "Nobody's going to pay to watch half a movie," which is very funny in hindsight. And generally speaking, I will be like, no, I mean, obviously, like the Peter Jackson films. Yeah, why not? Yeah, that's a good idea. But yeah, obviously the Peter Jackson films are better, and that's because there's more of them and they get to explore all of the details. Having said that, there are times when you think to yourself, boy, do I wish I could watch an actual complete story. And to pivot into my conclusion, this film is an example of that. Like I'm just like, I just want to watch a complete story, and it feels like for a lot of this, it's difficult not to be like, well, it will be interesting to see how the story ends in part 2, which is kind of a bit unsatisfying as far as watching this film. And, I mean, maybe when the second one comes out and it like really delivers on loads of stuff and we can see it as one holistic picture, this film will feel like, more justifiable. But, in a way, I feel like we're giving it a purer review by watching it now as one singular thing. And as one singular thing, it's got an issue. And that issue, of course, is that in terms of the pacing and the kind of plot trajectory, it just flops. Basically, and the central thing, kind of like you already hinted at, explicitly said, is that the big battle that feels like should be this big moment happens quite quickly.
Yeah.
Just in the middle of the film, should be at the end, should be more climactic. And that really is the main issue. But I mean, the positives...
What are you going to give it out of 10, Michael?
I was just going to say the positives, so I can explain why I'm not going to give it. The positives, just going to say, is that it's got a good ambiance. Okay. That's it. Like and it is an interesting world. For that reason, oh god, I don't think I can give it. I'm going to have to give it I'm going to give it a low 7. Which again,
yeah, no, that's fair.
That's what it
is. Absolutely.
If I was to give it anything, I would give it even lower than that, because, like I say, it's a bit difficult to give it quite high when the plot's...
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Yeah. I really enjoyed the first half of the movie, but the second half of the movie is a dud. It is a dud. And again, you should make the battle better, push the battle back further, have more political intrigue, make it seem like a bigger deal, and then the second half won't be that big of a dud, because naturally, you have to. I think they ended it at the right point. I get your point. You want to see a complete movie? They ended it at the right point with him joining the Fremen, and that seems like a good natural way to conclude part 1. But yeah, I think a 6.5 out of 10 is fair. Again, the ambiance is good, but yeah, I was just like, for half of that movie, man, I was just like, oh, this just really isn't going anyway. The plot trajectory. There we go. Doesn't lead it in a good place, unfortunately, for that second half, or an interesting, intriguing place like the first half. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for me, Michael. Yeah. And Paul Atreides' character could have been better. I think that's definitely a weakness as well. So let's get on to receipts now, Michael, because Ant-Man and the Wasp, which we guessed this. So I searched up Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania on Google, and this is the first headline from the BBC: Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, the worst Marvel film yet. Wow. So we had a guess last week that maybe because this was a more serious Marvel movie, this was not like a fun Ant-Man romp like the first two, people would not like it as much, it would lose its charm, and that seems to be the case, because this could change, and if there is a significant change, I'll change the score. But after 121 reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania has a 55% Rotten Tomatoes score. It's only the second MCU movie to have a rotten score, and I think it might. What was Eternals? I'm going to look it up. But essentially, Michael, you guessed 82, I guessed 84. So you were 27 off. I was 29 off. So yeah, that is our scores, because it's the first guess of the year. So you're winning by 2 right now. So are you happy?
I'm very happy. Yes, good old me.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have had even less faith, obviously, but
yes.
Duh.
Eternals got a score of 47, so I don't think it'll be the worst reviewed. But yeah, what we said last week kind of came true, but it was even worse than we ever thought. Because Ant-Man, it's gonna be decent. Nope. Damn. If we gave Ant-Man and the Wasp 4 or 5 out of 10, imagine how bad this Quantumania is going to be. It seems very
Well,
bad.
I think it kind of Because the logic would be that, like, the fact Marvel doesn't take it seriously gives it a degree of insulation, which I think is one of the reasons why Eternals was so crap, because it felt like it was taking itself very seriously, which means then you're just like, well, it's bad.
Well, apparently there's just a lot of shit going on, like it's a big swing for the fences. It's this big epic Marvel movie, which is just like quite shit. So, like Eternals, really. So, yeah. Anyway, Michael, what are we reviewing next week?
Next week, we are reviewing The Power of the Dog.
The Power of the Dog, the gayest movie ever. Join us for that. Who have you been, Michael?
I've been Michael.
Luke. Thanks for listening to our Dune review, and goodbye.
Goodbye.